what I really appreciate about the community is the energy and the frequency and the vibration that a lot of us are holding. Um, I've definitely been watching and seeing a lot of Justin's work out there right now. So big props to Justin for just gathering people, anchoring people, stabilizing. Jose, same thing. Luisa, I've seen some of your posts and just, things of inspiration, things that are benefiting people. Quinn, I've seen a lot of your stuff and little Gene Key excerpts, and that's all great stuff. Latoria as well. I love your posts and just keeping that positive energy as well. And let's see, who else has I seen here? Just trying to remember everything. Well, Jeremiah, as we can see, Jeremiah's hiding behind the. He's a special guest, and he's currently hiding. But we had a nice conference call with Jeremiah as well, and that was really nice to see that. What's up, brother? And yeah, so it was nice to kind of get us all together and just sort of leading the way about service, and which is really really important at this moment in time. But yeah, just all of us, Eris as well. I've seen, I think, one of your posts, Stephanie, and the recommendation at this point is to continue to do that. The world definitely needs a lot more of that at this moment. Everyone is on one theme for the most part, and so to continue to break out that monotony and continue to stand up in love, I think it's a really beautiful testament to what's going on here. Jacob, where are you, Jacob? That's another one I've been seeing, just really pushing out some great information out there, getting people to think and just reevaluate their life and what they're doing and so forth. So yeah, thank you for that, guys. All right, so let me now jump into getting this thing set up here. Screen share. Okay. Are we on? Yep. All right. Okay, so we'll jump into a little bit of the gene keys now, and do a quick review about just where we're at, and what again, the reason I mentioned about that extra month at the end of all this thing is that because of everything that's going on, I know that it's challenging to kind of like dive into the gene keys maybe at this moment in time, because it's a wisdom, and it takes time to digest it, and sometimes with just trying to get acclimated, prepared for what's going on, it's kind of like that thought, you can't teach a starving child much, because it's like if they need to survive first before you can really go in there. And I think over the last 2 weeks, I mean, a lot of us has just sort of gone into just making sure we got basic necessities, not knowing exactly how long or where this is going. And so when you're in that space, again, it's a little bit challenging to kind of drop into the gene keys and so forth. And what I wanted to do today is, again, just recap the importance of the activation sequence. And I'm going to review a little bit about mine again, just to kind of give you again, just of the perspective of how I utilize the gene keys and how they've showed up for me in my own life. But what you have to understand about the activation sequence is that it ultimately contains within it the genius that lies inside of you. And so once we really activate that sequence, what we're here to do in the world really begins to happen. And so, like in my scenario, right, we have in the radiance, I have the 30-second, and then in the purpose, I have the 40-second. So I want to take you through the being side, which is that radiance and the purpose. Okay, so the radiance and the purpose is your inside, okay? Your being, who you're being internally. And I believe that when you get that one right, there is a big breakthrough that happens in the external, right? And so if you take into consideration, this the 30-second gene key of failure, which is all about it's about facing failure as a species. It's about facing um, essentially death, and death though through the having of no money or the lack of money, you know and so for me, the way that that showed up, because, and the other thing to really take into consideration is that this activation sequence is very powerful because each of the keys has a programming partner. So the 30-second and the 40-second, they work together. It's a partner. And so the failure and the expectation for me, I think Jeremiah would definitely, could probably say a lot to this. But for me, I had massive expectations about myself and what I wanted for my life, and it always involved money. I saw myself coming from an entrepreneurial background and family, and I just sort of expected myself to be moving up inside of the business world, and continue to elevate my wealth. And that was a big thing for me, and so when I'm in that frequency of having an expectation and worrying about money, then the way it translates into the physical world, which is now the second programming partner of the life's work and the evolution, it's greed and immaturity, right? And immaturity from the standpoint of that I continue to originate things out of the frequency of fear, right? This is where I always speak about the essence of the beginning, because that's the wisdom of the 53rd gene key. When you are unaware of where your actions spring from, then what happens most of the time, we're originating in the lower frequency. We're doing it out of fear, out of guilt, out of shame. And when things originate there, they never hit their target. And as a result, you're just in a loop of just constantly starting and things not really working out. And that plays together with that greed. And especially, again, failure, money, that was my reality, right? And so that's how they play a part. So if I have this thing internally about not wanting to fail and making sure I have enough money and having this big expectation, then the way it would show up on the external is a lot of immaturity, because I was just trying to make money and make money as fast as I can. And as a result, I just continue to keep myself in the lower vibrations. So as I discovered the gene keys 8 years ago and started to dive into like spiritual psychology and started my own healing and my own evolution, what I learned to do was to not have the expectation and be in detachment, right? And once I became in that space of detachment, then to the outcome and being okay with whatever was emerging, then I activated that gift of preservation, right? So it goes failure and preservation. And so preservation being like knowing what to keep still, what's important, what's essential, right? And so, and the things that are essential are not money, right? It's beauty. It's those things that are useful. It's those things that are of use and of essential aspect of our own life. And so as I did that, then the way that would translate is that I was no longer being immature and starting my projects from a place that I just need to make money, right? Because if I'm starting from a place of I just need money, then again, it's not gonna do well. But if I did it from a place of service and love, then it became expansive, right? And then the life's work, which is greed and aspiration. If you go read the 54th gene key of aspiration, you can tell me whether I'm doing that or not, right? This is about cultural creatives who now, instead of using this power of greed to only serve myself, it's about having organizations working together for the whole, for humanity, right? And so that's how that all plays itself out. I'm in the place of detachment, right? I'm no longer worried about the money and relating to money in that same way. And as a result, my projects now become expansion, and they become of aspiration of having individuals and organizations working together. But it's all like it's an unlocking that has to occur, and it just takes time. It takes contemplation, right? And so what I wanted to just offer to the group is, I know it can be sometimes a little bit frustrating because it's a wisdom, right? And like when I first started reading the Gene Keys, it's not easy wisdom. Like we could feel it in the DNA, we can feel it doing something, but it's not easy wisdom to get a hold of. It's very much like a Bible, it's got, like Bibles, it takes a little while to penetrate, all the great books. It's a different, yeah, it's a different consciousness, and so it takes time. It takes time to digest it. But in that space of contemplation, what you also want to take into consideration, and Richard speaks to this a lot, 10% on the shadow, 90% on your gift and your siddhi. Meaning, many people love to sort of wallow in the shadows, right? There's just like in the, and you can take an enormous amount of time in there. But it's better to contemplate the gift and the siddhis. And with time, if you haven't quite spotted that shadow, the shadow will become apparent. It'll become apparent with time. And the reason I share that with you, I think I've shared this already in this group, is that when I was first trying to figure out that greed shadow, it took me literally probably like 2 to 3 years to finally spot it and go, oh my gosh, there it is. I can see that thing moving now. But I was always in the aspiration and the siddhi and contemplating that. And it took a couple years to really spot the shadow. Now, they don't all have to take that long, but for me, it took that long. And I share that with you because if you're having a little bit of challenge with this, it's okay. That's good. I feel like things that come a little too easy sometimes leave a little too easy. And so if you're challenged by something, if it's a martial art, right now I'm doing something called functional patterns, and it's extremely difficult. And that challenge, it excites me, because the mastering of that is just something that I relish in. And I think I offer that again to the group as well, because things of this nature are going to take time to penetrate. But just offering to stay with it, be gentle on yourself in the process of it, and know that the activation really does contain the codes of why you're here and what you're supposed to be doing. I've been in the Gene Key community for a good 8 years now, and have seen people unlock these things, and the way that they move in the world afterwards, it's quite extraordinary. And again, going into the space that we're going into as a community and as a whole, wanting to get yourself unlocked, or getting yourself unlocked, is definitely going to be something that you're going to want to do. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Oh, good. I think it's not. Oh, there it is. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So again, it's pretty much like Jose just said here to me on my right, but pretty much everything I just covered is in these slides. But what I'd love to do now is just kind of open it up. I want to hear from individuals that have been deeper in the contemplation. What sort of insights are you getting? Are you getting through the activation? Has anyone feeling like that core stability has been coming in? Like for me, obviously right now, 42nd is that's my life's purpose, right? So it's expectation, detachment, celebration. And in this current state, I have no expectation of the way this drama is supposed to unfold, meaning life. And as a result, I'm always in full detachment and acceptance of what is, allowing for a core stability. I'm more of a fascinated witness of this movie that's playing out in all of our realities. I don't have an expectation, but that is what creates my anchor, creates that rootedness, and that's why they call it the core stability, because your external world should never really move you internally. It has, and that's the humanity we've known. But the reality is that once you come into that individuation and that core stability, the external world just doesn't really rock you. And that's where we want to get to, because where are we useful to society? Are we useful when we're rocked and everything that's happening and we're just in that space? Or are we useful and efficient and powerful in society when, despite the chaos and the movement, we're connected, we're calm, we have insight? That's when we're of use. So that core stability, that being side, powerful. And sometimes it takes initiation, like going through that failure gene key for me was rather hard, like moving through not worrying about money when my whole life was about getting to the top of the hierarchy. I have that 54th, and having to have the mortgage phoenix sort of rebirth me and say, you just sit yourself right there, you're not supposed to worry about money, this is all being held by the divine, and just relax, Francisco, and just show up, open your heart, and get to work, and whatever unfolds is the way it's supposed to be. Very challenging for a person who'd like to will stuff, because I have a strong will. That's a 54 gene key, and all of a sudden just having to let go and be okay with what is. But through that initiation, through that inner work, now it's really evident, so it's just as a way to encourage everyone listening to, that this activation, specifically radiance and purpose, powerful, powerful, powerful. Who was? Go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, hi, everyone. So I can share. Are you guys getting my echo?
No.
No? Okay, good. So the gene key that I've been, I guess you could say, really working on the most, working on understanding the most, is my 47th, which is my purpose. My shadow is oppression. And when I first read it, I did not quite understand it. I mean, I did, but I didn't quite understand the details. But as actually the last roundtable that we had, it was able to help me out a little bit more, because one of the items that it mentions is it mentions the prime archetype, which I didn't quite understand just yet. But one of the things that I am contemplating, and I've been working on this. It's crazy because I've been working on this for quite a few years. I knew that it was something. I didn't know that it was part of my shadow. I didn't know at that time, but I knew that it was something I needed to work on. And as I have my gene key here, and if I read it to you guys, just to kind of
please.
Help you guys understand a little bit there, for those of you that are not familiar with the 47th, it says that hang on just a second. It pretty much says that I don't listen. I tend to not listen to others. I only listen to them on my agenda, which I never knew I did. But when I realized that I did, it all just made perfect sense. I wasn't, what is my connecting gene key, or the partner gene key, is the 22nd. So my 22nd is the radiance, right? And which is dishonor. And so I had no idea that I was dishonoring, especially my loved ones, because everything was just about me. And so I just had no idea. And And again, it all connects with my prime archetype, right? So it was very interesting, and I'm actually contemplating this one a little bit more than I thought I needed to. And as I started reading through the the shadow a little bit more, and I started questioning, whether it's a repressive nature or reactive nature, and turns out that it is repressive. It says here repressive nature, which is hopeless. I'm a quiet. I quietly compromise. And it is true. I do tend to do that. And so I've been working on that a little bit more. I'm understanding now the gift a little bit better. I have tons of questions about the city. So much has come up. In fact, so much about the city has come up ever since I did the breath work at the Integriton, because of the visions that I had. And so it's just crazy. It's amazing. But so much has developed just from, connecting all of this, just from everything happening the way it has been, from its, natural transgression, right? But yeah, I thought I'd share a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for your vulnerability. I know it's not easy to share, things of that nature at times. And yeah, definitely very encouraging for everyone in the community to hear that. It's like, the shadows are not bad. It's not like a lot of times we have no awareness of them. They're just deeper below the surface. And then when you spot it, you're just like, oh my God, it kind of does that thing to you where, yeah, it's eye-opening, it's insightful. There's a big epiphany, so yeah, and the 22nd, 42nd, or 47. I mean, those are big keys. They're Christ keys. They're Jesus, Yeshua, Jesus keys. So they're powerful stuff. So, and I love how you're also, yeah, just how when you begin to walk that soul path, it is very. It's just fascinating the way it slowly starts to open and reveal itself.
Right.
Again, and it just takes an open heart. It takes gentleness and curiosity, but it's like the breadcrumb. God leaves you the breadcrumbs. Like, come on, Stephanie, come on, you're doing well. Okay, yeah,
That's
follow
right.
that intuition, follow it, and then boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, it's like it starts opening, and that's what I mean about the mechanics of consciousness. You can't cheat consciousness. It knows the purity of your heart. It's like you cannot get into the higher realms without the innocence of the child. You really have to go in with that energy, and through that, the higher realms open. And so I love your work so far. So great work. Yes.
Can I drop into a contemplation I have on the oppression?
Sure.
Yeah. You wanna lower your volume?
Yeah, and then Latoria, I'm gonna call on you in just a second because I saw that you raised your voice. Go ahead, brother.
Hey, everybody. So it's interesting you brought up the key oppression. I've had a contemplation come through in the past about oppression, and I think I'll drop into it, and whatever you can get from this, Stephanie, can serve you and anybody else in the group that has oppression. Oppression, from what I've come to see, I have a really good friend, a best friend from my childhood, who has that key. And so I've dropped into that contemplation, especially because its programming partner is dishonor. And the way that oppression has shown up, and I can see it in my own past, it is kind of an accumulation of our own beliefs about ourselves that we carry, right? And we use it to oppress ourselves, right? And that's where the dishonor happens. Is that we've taken on these beliefs, about our past, or we're holding grudges, and we don't even realize it, but we carry it, and so we dishonor ourselves. We feel oppressed, and if that gets deep, right, that can even create that depressive state, because it's like it's oppression. It goes directly there. But what I find to be so beautiful is the transmutation, which is the gift, into transfiguration. So transmutation is an alchemical process, right? It's the process of being able to turn lead into gold. So you can imagine you're carrying these things, right? And at the shadow level, it's oppressing you. It's heavy. It really makes you look at the dark side. But the moment you like, there's this. It says, remembering the precious gift of life, even when facing the darkest hour, right? So like when we can learn to use this oppression and transmute it, right? It's like that same energy that we've been carrying begins to launch us forward. And we begin to turn these past events into gold, right? And it becomes lighter, it becomes easier. And you can imagine that's why it's graciousness. You begin to appreciate life a little bit easier just because you've been able to move through that process. So it's like, Stephanie, I don't really get the impression that you carry oppression heavily on yourself, which is good. That means that the transmutation has already occurred at a certain event in your life. But the transfiguration, that's the essence that appears. It is your ability to take these kind of negative things and transform them into their higher octave so that you can show up a little lighter in life. So yeah, that's my contemplation on that.
Beautiful, brother.
That's great, Jose. Actually, I'm glad that you just broke it down for me the way you just did, because now one of the visions I had at the Integriton, it just goes hand in hand with what you just said. So that was amazing. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was beautiful, brother. But yeah, Steph, my sons have 2247 as life's work and evolution. So I've contemplated that. And I think Jose's was right on the money, but it's most of people that have that one, they just carry it very heavy. But that's, again, it's like nothing is not for naught. And, you can utilize all that's happened to you as a way to transform into the higher octave, because that's ultimately the rebirth process. It's like I all the stuff that has ever happened to me, I've been able to leverage it and find the gold in that. And so I relate to it in a much different way. At the very beginning, it's very victim relationship, like why it was them, it's all outside of me. And once I took the power back and then started that process, that's the real alchemist. The alchemist isn't this guy tinkering, actually trying to make gold. It's that. It's taking the pain, the darkness, and making it into light, into gold. And so I love your contemplation. And Jose also mentioned this, but the people that are able to do that effectively, and in spiritual psychology, we would we would hear these stories of individuals that have been, so traumatized by life, and yet because of the way they related to it, they were able to become very gracious. It seems like the individuals that have been hurt the most have the ability to be the most gracious among us. As long as you relate to it, not from that victim state, but from that state of, how do I turn this into gold? How does this open my heart more? How does this make me more gracious? What qualities do I need to birth inside of myself to carry that wound lightly? Is it patience? Is it, and that's the process. So, and I do think that the 22nd gene key, obviously it's such an important one in our current humanity. So I'm glad you're working on unlocking it.
I am.
All right. So there was somebody else, let's see, that wanted to share. Who else wanted to share?
Victoria?
Free to unmute yourself.
Hello. So the gene key that I have is the 15th gene key, and it's the dullness. And this one really hit me yesterday, and I'll just read a little bit of it. It says a 15th shadow of dullness describes a low frequency human attitude to being alive in the body. one of the greatest fears of the 15th shadow is to be locked into a repeating rhythm that never changes. And that it really hit me yesterday. I'm constantly moving and going. And even in this coronavirus, I've been so focused on making sure that I'm using this time to master things so that when I come out of this, I'm better. I'm like, okay, this is the time to really hone in and just figure out all these things that I've wanted to spend time with, but didn't have it. So I'm constantly thinking of getting out of it. And yesterday, I'm in my routine. My son, he's doing his work. And I was talking to a friend and she said, did you hear that Mayor Eric Garcetti said that we'll be quarantined for 2 months? And I was like, no, I hadn't heard that because I've been, I've been limiting the news. And we got off the phone and I felt like a shortness of breath because the idea of now I can't see 2 months being in the house. I could see maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but I can't see 2 months. And I literally just the idea of being stuck and not being able to move and just I literally just had to go in my prayer closet and pray and breathe and like really focus on my breathing. And so to have read this and to know that like this stuff is so real, like that is my shadow. But on the flip side, it says the beauty of the 15th gift lies in the acceptance of the ordinaries. And so this is a time where I can really just slow down. I don't have to be so focused on mastering everything real estate related. I don't have to be the super agent on I can really enjoy this time and take that bubble bath that I never seem to take or watch that movie that is a waste of time, and so it's just realizing that the gift is realizing that even going with the ebbs and flows is a good thing. So that's
Wow.
what I got.
I just read something here on the Living Library. It says, if you can allow the dullness to permeate your entire being without being stuck in any reaction, it will cease to be dull. You will experience it as growth and at even higher levels as the flowering consciousness known as fluorescence. That's that accepting state of sitting with that energy.
Yeah, and there's, we're always trying to, get somewhere, do something, and there's so much beauty in the mundane. I remember one time hearing Richard say, if I would create a 65th key, I think he said it would be like hope would be the shadow, and then ordinariness, I think the gift or something to that effect. But it was just highlighting the fact that once we can be okay with the mundane, with the dull, that there's such power in that. It becomes a magnetism, because people are so drawn to like, how can you be in that state, if it's boring, but it's just where you're relishing life in any moment. And that's magnetic energy. And that's a beautiful, beautiful contemplation. And yeah, and I'm sure like it'll serve so many in the community as well, where yeah, let's use the opportunity to, sharpen our skills or become, do the things that we've always wanted to do. But at the same time, drop into those simple things, that we don't have to be in production mode, that we can finally watch the movie, take the bubble bath and do those things and enjoy it and relish it. It's a powerful, powerful time for all of that.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Any other shares? Where are you, Justin? Anything on your activation that you've been opening up?
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't really been diving too much deeper into the activation sequence, but I think what you just said, Latoya, is so important for us entrepreneurs to understand, because my shadow in my life's work is force. And I think one thing that I've been able to learn just I've gone through this coronavirus process that we're going through for the last 4 years, I can say, life has been trying to slow me down. And I think what's beginning to happen to all of us is, life, the earth, Gaia, God, literally got to a point where we're moving so quickly and life just wants us to slow down. And most people can't fathom or hold enough space to be able to be indoors for, like you mentioned, 2 months. It's scary to me that that's scary to everyone. And, I mean that with all due respect and love, but it's like, life isn't just always about our 9 to 5 or, we really got to begin to find beauty in the small things in life and be able to appreciate the small conversations, or, like Francisco said, taking a bath. And if I could speak from experience, I've gone through days on days and months, let's just say, for example, I do go take a bubble bath and I'm in the bath and I don't even want to be in the bath because my body's telling me I want to continuously move. It's like, why am I in this bath? Because I should be working. I should be making calls. I should be talking to more investors to get more deals. And I went through 4+ years of my body not wanting to be in my body. It always want to be somewhere else. And I think a lot of us real estate agents and just entrepreneurs in general can relate to that, because I think what's beginning to happen now is there's nowhere to run anymore. I used to be able to go run and do other things or try to somewhat distract myself in every way, shape, or form. And I think what's beginning to happen now is there's nowhere really else to run. And for most people like us, I think it begins to become very scary, because all the things that we used as a form of distraction are really being shown in front of our eyes, and we don't have access to those things anymore. And I think it's, if you have the eyes to see, it's a very beautiful process, but we got to begin to step into that acceptance of what's really transpiring and not get overwhelmed with what's showing. So
Beautiful, brother.
Thank you. Lupe?
Get on. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. Well, I want to share about my evolution, Gene Key 52. I've been very contemplating that one, because of the main things that it says on the shadow, which is stress. That has played a big part in my life for the negative part. But this past, I would say 8 months and stuff, it's been a lot of healing. But what for this month has been really interesting, and not much about the virus, but was taking the healing inside of me. Last month, I had decided to do a huge detox, and I chose last week to do it. So I was going into this really deep meditation, into healing the vibration of my heart, because I protect my heart so much that sometimes I can't give love as people want to see it. But anyway, so there's a lot of healing. And part of this gene, it says restrain and stillness. I used to want to protect people, that I wouldn't allow them to make mistakes that would make them grow. For my girls or people that are close to me, I used to want to protect them so much. So I started, allowing things to flow. And as I did, last week was so powerful for me. It was so beautiful. I've been in so much peace and love and grounding. And something happened this week that I went, oh my God. My dad, that I only seen one time in 52 years, reached out to me. Facebook. And I went, oh, okay. And I automatically said, accept. I'm okay with this. I send love and I no judgment, which in my other key gene, I have judgment. And I felt love and just send it to him. And to me, it was such growth. And I just felt the love that I've been feeling. Now I'm able to share it, even if it's just energetically. Because this past week, I've been receiving messages from people that I haven't heard from in years, that either we had a dispute or we have, and it's amazing how I mean getting all these messages from people that I have not heard in years. It's been very, very interesting week for sure. Not just because of the virus, because of there's so much love that we can give to those people that are still carrying that pain from because they feel that they hurt me. And now that I'm able to release them from that, it's so rewarding. So, so rewarding. And I would have not been able to do that, I don't think, without the work that I've been putting into. So I just wanted to share that.
Bravo. Bravo on that. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I see this is what, when I say like the intricacies of human consciousness, right? How do you explain that the moment that you started to open the heart and work on it, that anomalies like someone like your father after 52 years reaches out, and then these other individuals that you've had tension and qualms with now all of a sudden reach out, that starts to give you an idea of how intricate consciousness is, and that when we start to do the work externally, it then starts to manifest on the external. You can't write this. And it's just another beautiful testament. So thank you, Lupe, for doing the work, like really doing the work, right? And then for sharing so that all of us in the community can celebrate you, can acknowledge you, and can use your work as a reference for us, to continue on. So thank you. Sandra.
I was talking to Manny earlier. I think it was just actually yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And so my let's see here, my radiance is the 56th key. So the shadow is distraction, and the gift is enrichment, and the city is intoxication, and then the purpose is limitation is the shadow, realism is the gift, and justice is the city. And I made a comment to him about how I really wish I was around everyone at the Legacy and the Phoenix and just the Delta, because it just felt so great. One thing I took for granted was just how everyone's just so responsible for their energy and their way of being. And that's why the conversations were so rich, is because we saw each other equally and we just held space equally. And it's just such a beautiful space, right? And so he made a comment to me, and he said, or I was kind of just doing my share, and how over there, I'm kind of in the bleachers. And then where I'm at right now, I'm in the game. Like I'm on the field. And so I'm definitely on the field here with my organization. I'm being extremely triggered by my environment, by the relationships that I have. And so what I'm seeing is that my way of being is powerful, and how I'm getting triggered, and how I have to transmute it and alchemize it, and to elevate the frequency of not just myself, but of my family, but of my employees, like, and then their families. It's just, and then I can feel like how I'm distracting myself, and how I feel limited in my voice and um in my power. And so what has been beautiful is that I'm stepping in and really acknowledging that power here, and how I have like a real proud moment that I want to share, where I was able to get my brother and my dad, because we're having a lot of turbulence about having our team be remote, because we are an essential business, and so we're still working and we're still here in the office, and there's that struggle of, I want our team to be remote, and then no, we're gonna be creating the systems and structures before we make that decision. So that's been my problem, or what is it called?
Crucible challenge.
Yes, the challenge. And so what we were able to share was that our character is being defined right now. And I did it in a very beautiful, graceful, loving way, to really just say that, because inside and like turbulently, and then like with Manny, I was just kind of like upset and not graceful. And so I was able to kind of like work it out, and even like sharing with him, and then kind of just with myself, I'm able to kind of transmute it in the way I can alchemize things. And that is through sharing it with other people. And then that's also with me meditating, and that's also me journaling, and then also looking at my chart as well for my astrology. So that's also helping, just to give ideas to other people as well when they're coming up with things. Anyways, what was I able to do was, I was able to elevate the conversation by being like soft, and trying to like say, hey, like, you're leading us, like you are, and not me leading us, I was saying it to my dad, I was like, you're leading us, you're leading our family, and your character your character and your way of being is like on the spotlight right now. And your way of communicating, like I said, it like we practice for speeches all the time, that you have a platform, and you practice your way of delivery to people who you're going to speak to, hundreds of people. And I said, how is your delivery to the people you're in with the trenches? Because the people who are side by side working with you in this moment of chaos matters. And how you're treating to the people matter. And the way he was speaking, and it's not in an elevated state, it was at a dominating state. And it's very triggering for me. So I realized my power of being was because I felt limited. Like, I felt like I didn't have a voice. I felt like what I was saying didn't matter because of the way I was being, like, the night before, because it was a little volcanic the night before. So full transparency, that was one night. And then the next morning when I was soft, that was when the breakthrough happened, where I was like, look, our characters are being defined right now. And so the reason why I'm sharing that for everyone to see is that we're all not perfect. We're all on this journey. We're all trying to figure out how these shadows are showing up. And I feel like everything is being unearthed right now. And, hearing Francisco have an amazing week, that's awesome. And like, you're staying strong. And I guess it's definitely speaks to like how long you've been in the work. I just want to give a voice to everyone else who's in the program who like have grace for ourselves, and that, yeah, we can be volcanic and those things can happen and erupt, but the next morning I was able to come at it in a graceful and soft way, and like moved so
Mm.
much moved. You know, I already have my one of my girls remote. We have another schedule of remote for next week, and it's just like the frequency and the way of being of everyone in the office just shifted, and
Mm.
like his way of delivering things has shifted. And I just want to go ahead and just share that story of like our way of being is powerful in the way we're showing up. So thank you.
Mm. That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That is a powerful example and what opportunities are in this space right now, as you mentioned, because, yeah, character is very much highlighted, and and to your point, absolutely very natural. I mean, it's like whenever anything is happening, and if it causes that reaction, do what Sandra just did, just being with it, not trying to act in that moment. You may need a place to vent it, maybe, but being with it. And then that's the process, because we're like children in the emotional realm. It's like, especially men, it's like, I can't handle this, and blah, you want to get it out. If you can just be still, be quiet, and with time, that will move through you. It's kind of like what Avery mentioned, right? It's like when you purify the body, it's like these things can move through a lot easier, and faster, and just wherever you are, it's okay. And that's a really beautiful example, Sandra, of yeah. I mean, there's triggers to go around for days right now, and what you've done by taking it and then softening into it, that just must have just opened your father, just you know it just you slid in, and before you knew it, you were inside his field, and you went and he's you know I love that move. I love that move. So yeah, it's and again, I think we're gonna have Yvonne on very soon, and that's what I mean about like, where's the gold right now? Like, that's gold. That's a reference point for you moving forward of how to handle these big triggers and how to move an organization on softness and the femininity, and these higher ways of being. And that's at the end of the day what our work is. It's, I keep sharing with people that I've been on the phones, is just like just stabilizing energy and alchemizing the rooms where I'm in. And but that's a really powerful example. So thank you, Sandra. Okay, so let's see. Let's move on a little bit more here with this, how this contemplation works. And Jose, you can definitely chime in on this as well. But um, this particular key, if you have some time, maybe listen to it, read it. Very appropriate for right now, because what this gene key, sort of the essence of the gene key, is that when we're in the shadow, excuse me, sorry, when we're in the shadow of our deafness, right, what happens is that there's so much noise around us that we're not listening to the whisper of the soul. And especially right now, because I mean, the airwaves and the media, everything is, and individuals, it's thick. That's what I mean by it's thick. And when you allow that to come in, you become deaf to your own intuition, your own divine source. And during this time, it's a great opportunity to practice tuning everything out and not being caught up in the low frequency current that's moving throughout the entire planet. And by shutting everything out, then we can listen to that insight. And this is my SQ. So definitely have contemplated this one a lot. and have gotten really good at it. Definitely very early on, it was like taking all the information from everyone else and what society meant and said and what I was supposed to be doing. And I was just deaf. I was just deaf to my own knowledge, my own wisdom. And as I continued to unlock this, it happened. I think I might have shared this, but if I did not, I think it's worth. But I was doing a walking contemplation one time, and I do that a lot. I walk and meditate, because meditation is nothing much more than being present. It's being connected to the breath, being in your body, and just being in that space. And so I was doing this walking meditation, and I was being interviewed. That was the imagery coming through. And in the imagery, a woman asked me, so tell us, Francisco, which business book are you reading? And I said, oh, I'm not reading anything at the moment. And she says, really, why not? I said, because at some point I realized that I had all the answers within me. And when I said that in my imagination and in the interview that I was imagining, I literally went to my knees and I started to cry. It was that weeping, and for me, that was a hit, because anytime I have a cathartic cellular memory where I just start going into weeping like that, it was a hit. And what I realized from there is just what the Gene Keys speaks about. All of it is inside of us, all of it, and the more still, the more quiet, the more I transmute, the more I move the lower emotions out, the more I feel the wisdom flows. And it isn't something that I'm learning or that I've learned. It's just open and allow God and the universe to play through me. But it can only happen through a purification process, and so I leave that as a way to, again, just sort of anchor this concept of like, the answers are all here. This is what Jesus said: the kingdom of heaven is within you. And we, and just need to pay tribute to that, on a grand scale, especially right now, given the dynamic that we're moving through as a collective, is continue to go within. And again, like Justin mentioned, we don't really have an option anymore. The distractions are gone. The ability to go and spend money is gone. And it's just you and your shadow, you and your shadow. And whatever's coming up inside of that, like, this is the opportunity just to dive deeper into that. And the more you dive into that, the more individuated you become, the more still you become. And then when you do that, this is where the epiphanies come through. It just, wisdom, just boom, boom, ideas, connections, pattern recognition, boom, 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 boom. It opens, and it's just like, oh, but the necessity to cut everyone else out and just listen to your own divine wisdom is the key.
Yeah, and I'll echo a little bit of what you're saying, because the reason I put this slide into the presentation was because I was getting a lot of feedback that there's many of us that haven't actually been creating the time for the contemplation, that we haven't actually been consistent with it, and contemplation requires you to pause in life, right? It requires you to slow down a little bit. And this Gene Key 43, I feel like, captures that essence perfectly, right? It's like, if you're moving through the Gene Keys and you haven't quite penetrated the wisdom, well, the shadow of deafness is apparent. It's like you're not actually moving through the wisdom or penetrating the wisdom because you're deaf, right? But it's not that you're physically deaf. You're internally deaf to what's actually going on inside of you. And this will continue to happen until you create the necessary stillness in your life. Because what is deafness, right? It's distraction, right? It's that inertia or indifference. It's all these shadow states. It can all be summed up into deafness. It's the same reason we don't listen, right, to the things that we know that are good for us. And so when we're able to cultivate so Justin just messaged me telling me the programming partner to deafness is complexity, which is perfect. Yeah. Right? It's like your life is there's so much commotion that you don't even grant yourself the opportunity to actually listen to what your body needs, what you're supposed to be doing, and if you really want to be successful in this contemplation piece, you need to begin prioritizing those pauses, those moments where you're allowed the mental space to actually think and drop in and not have to pressure yourself or be in a rush. And I know more than anyone that those opportunities aren't always there, but it is essentially because the deafness has gotten a hold of me and I'm keeping myself distracted. You know, it's like we got to be able to witness these shadows when they're in action. And I think it's just a, you know, when we talk about one of the slides that was up earlier where the survival or shadow frequency, it's dance. You know, there's a lot of noise out there and we're constantly on our phones listening to what everybody is suggesting, but never do we check in with ourselves to actually know what we're feeling. And so it's like I put this key here again just to emphasize, like, create the space. If you notice, the archetype here is breakthrough, right? It says breakthrough right there. It's like, because that's when the breakthrough is going to happen, when you actually prioritize the time to slow down and breathe and become conscious of what's moving through your life. You know, because when you become conscious and aware of what's moving through your life because you've slowed down, the insights come through, right? Those are the moments when you catch the shadows. Those are the moments when you have the breakthrough that lead to that epiphany, that aha moment where you now realize why you need to make a change in your life, right? But it begins with just creating the space, right? And yeah, I think that sums up the reason I put it on here.
Yeah, it's beautiful, brother. And one thing that I would also add to that is that, you know, is that to be a contemplator is simply to create spaciousness in your life, and you can still run 1,000-person organization or what. It doesn't matter that piece of, like if you look at my schedule normally, not right now, but I mean, there's always, I got a lot of things scheduled out on my thing, but I consider myself a contemplator, even though, you know, the schedule is very much preoccupied, you know, because I've created the internal spaciousness in those pauses. Even if I'm in a meeting with someone, I'm in a contemplation. You know, I'm deeply listening. I'm quiet. You know, there's a texture to being a contemplator, and it's just, you know, we're so noisy. You know, we're meaning like the mind thinks, and we immediately want to shoot it out. You know, and it's like I've learned. I've said this before. Just catch the arrows. Is it really necessary? You know, this particular one, it's like, it's about timing, and you know, because you're deaf, you're always, your timing is off. You know, it's just like I one of the practices for me to unlock was just shut up, Francisco. You know, just, I would just catch the arrow, and it's like, you know, because I wanted to add something to that. No, you know, and just try to do that as much as possible. And then through that, I just realized, like, gosh, man, a lot of the stuff that I would add to things, it wasn't, not even necessary. It's just, I want to be heard. I want, you know, whatever it was at that time. And the more that I continued to just kind of, you know, just catch the arrows, it just opened up something. It gave me spaciousness inside the inner landscape. And once you have that, you could have a full schedule, but you're still contemplating. You know, it's happening on a moment by moment basis. So I wanted to read to you. I used to post this. I posted it a couple different times, but yeah. So it's from the 43rd gene key. It says, in Japanese culture, one of the key words for insight is satori, a sudden breakthrough from within. No teacher or system could lead you to the experience of satori, but these moments occur more frequently as you relax more deeply into your inner nature. As they become more frequent, a certain deep spirit of trust begins to pervade and suffuse your being, as through life's mysteries we're awakening directly inside you. You begin to realize that although you cannot create these breakthroughs, you can expand the environment in which they seem to occur. This environment is one of deep relaxedness and solitude. Such solitude does not mean you have to withdraw from the world, but that you use the same deafness from the shadow to filter out all but the essential and beautiful from your life. You would become a more contemplative being, and your gait through the world will become more centering than directed. In this way, your awareness turns inwards without losing any of its worldliness, making you unique, but integrated and profoundly yet accessible. That's a really beautiful thing there from the gift of insight. But again, in order to have insight, you just have to create the inner environment to allow that, you know and the more you do, the more breakthroughs, the more insight, and in contemplation is that key. Okay, so let's go into oh oh geez, there, sorry about that, Jose. That was not, I wanted to save that for the, okay, hold on a second. Such a beautiful slide. Okay, let's do that again. Okay, so here is a slide that I just thought was absolutely amazing, but I gotta clear this out. Sorry. Move this out of the way. As you can see, I'm 43 years old and technology is not, I'm not a millennial. Just kidding. Okay. All right. So here it is. So Jose and I were having this conversation. I brought this up, and then he already had this slide. I'm like, oh my gosh, this slide is absolutely perfect for it. And it's about embodying wisdom, right? And the way that I know wisdom is that it's of God, you know, and wisdom has another word. It's called Sophia, right? So Sophia is wisdom, and wisdom is from God, right? And if you look at it from a biblical context, like the King Solomon, King David, they were granted Sophia. They were granted wisdom by God because of the purity of their heart. Okay, what does that really mean? What does that really indicate? And I think this slide really does it. Um, if we've talked about this before, but the three planes of existence on the lower realm is your physical body, your emotional body, and your mental body. And so from the mental standpoint, so think about it as layers, right? Can you guys see my hands? Okay. So think about it from layers, right? You got your physical, and then you got your emotional, and then you got the mental. And then you got the higher realms, right? So you have this divine wisdom. So what happens for most people is that mental plane is full of opinions, comparisons, and judgments. So it's noisy, right? And then on the emotional level, on the emotional plane, what typically is playing out there is your desires. But a lot of that has just drama all over it. And as a result of that drama, you can almost think of it like it's noisy, and so when you have that going on, it's just a lot of turbulence, a lot of noise. And then on the physical level, it's always about survival and fear. And a lot of individuals don't feel safe in their body. They don't feel safe in their surroundings and their environment. And so there's a real distinct vibration in the body when that is still very active for individuals. So if you have the mental plane preoccupied by judgments and comparisons, and the emotional body, being in turbulence, and then the physical body being in the vibration of survival, then what happens is the wisdom, the Sophia, it can't make its way in. It gets disturbed, and so by the time it actually hits the body, it's just a distortion. It's fragments of truth, right? But by doing this work, right, by cleaning up the emotions, by healing the trauma that has occurred in our life, what happens is that the mind begins to open. Because remember, the mind is a slave to the emotional plane. The mind is a slave to the emotional plane. And so once we begin to heal the trauma and the turbulence of our journey, then the emotional plane starts to placate. It starts to become quiet. And as that happens, then the mental plane, it opens like a lotus. It becomes lucid. It becomes quiet. You know, you're able to enter into the silence much easier. And so, and immediately when that opens, then that wisdom can start to come in, right? And so here's the beauty of this slide, right? It's like once the chakras, you know, sort of align, and I really do feel like, um, you know, what Yeshua meant when he said that my father's home has 7 mansions or something to that effect. Maybe Jacob can kind of clean that up. Um, you know, what I mean, what I feel that those 7 mansions are these 7 energetic portals that lie in the body. And once those become healed, and we feel safe in the body, we clean up the emotional drama of the life, the mind then opens, then wisdom starts to filter down into the body, you know. And as that occurs, you know, the heart opens, it gets purified. And this is what I feel that why God, you know, did that for King Solomon and King David, right? It's like the heart was open and pure, and as a result, the wisdom can pour in, right? But why does God want to give wisdom if you know, if there's still a lot of work to be done in these lower planes? You know, it would be, it would, spiritual ego is the worst ego. Spiritual ego is the worst ego. You know, when individuals go do medicine or they go and touch these higher planes, but they're still dealing with the emotional drama of their life, it's tough. You know, it's tough to be around sometimes individuals because they become dogmatic. You know, they believe that they know and they're the right ones, you know. And so that's why it's critical that this inner work is done and we heal the emotions and the mental and the physical body. And as that happens, then all of a sudden the wisdom begins to pour in. And this is what the alchemists and so forth would call the philosopher's stone. It's like you purify the body enough and the emotions where you become like the philosopher, right? There's a wisdom that starts to pour out, but it doesn't happen without this first. This is the key to essentially embodying wisdom. And it's a process. It's a slow, methodical process. You cannot cheat consciousness. You know, if there is still work to be done, be okay with that work. And know that there's a slow and deliberate process, and that you're not racing anybody. It's not a competition. And that you're ultimately involved in the greatest work in the universe, and that is to know your own divinity. And through that process, it should be a very, like, what do you call, like a very intimate journey. You know, one, you're just one with yourself and God, and that's it. There's no competition, and it's this slow process, and there's going to be a lot of tears and a lot of crying and a lot of discovery. And I have shared that before, but the most sacred waters on the planet are human tears, right? You know, we have suffered so much as a humanity, but yet, and even in our own life, but we just haven't grieved those things. We haven't really felt them in such a way that the grief can open us. A grief is a portal into the divine. The more that you allow grief to do its job inside of you, the more soft you become, the more open you become. It thaws out the walls around the heart. Is that's what the suffering, and that's what grief and grace can do for you. So I just thought it was a beautiful slide. And Jose, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah. So I think I'll start off by saying, you know, if you haven't cried recently or in a while, you need to be paying attention to this slide right now, you know, because the way that I went, and I'm going to move through my experience of this and why I see it the way it is, right? It's like when you have your mental emotional, and physical plane all spread out in different directions. That's the deafness. That's the inability to actually be present, right? Because your emotional body, your mental body, they all want different things. And so it creates this really noisy frequency in your body. But the moment you begin to do this work and you start going inward and you actually begin to take it seriously as like a lifestyle, right? The merging of these three bodies begins to occur because you begin to clean up your emotional body, you begin to clean up your mental body, and it all settles in nicely into your physical body, right? So those lower three chakras, it's like they become a little more stable. And within that stability is where you experience the open heart, right? The zenith of being in a flow state will be when you can permanently open your heart, right? Permanently be able to feel, right? And you have to imagine how that changes your life. Your ability to be grateful for what you have right now amplifies when you have an open heart. Your ability to look at your children and feel that emotion, that intensity of love is, that omnipresence of that. It becomes easier because your heart is open to receive and to give, right? So it's like this process of doing this internal work so that we can achieve that open heart. Because when we achieve an open heart collectively, and this is, I think, what's so beautiful about our ecosystem here, it's like a lot of us have experienced the open heart. A lot of us have moved through the tears and experienced that feeling. And so that's the sentient, right? That's the ability to feel and acknowledge each other and really intimately know one another without judgment. It is that process of opening the heart, right? It's like, but if you want to achieve that on a regular basis, it's about cleaning up. It's like cleaning up what you've been ignoring, right? Feeling the pain and sitting with it and not wondering, but really drawing in the insight as to why you're having these emotions in the first place. And it's like it's really going to come down to that alignment. And when you have a heart open, that's the epiphany. That's what's called the causal body. It's like it's another subtle body that we have, right? We have our physical body, our emotional body, our mental body. The moment those are clear, we enter what's called the causal body. And the causal body is what's known to, it's essentially where the spirit is allowed to move into the body and be present when you speak, be present when you're, just in your meditations. It's almost like unlocking a big piece about what your body is capable of doing, right? But before, if you don't, for example, if you don't do this work, right, the spirit can't incarnate into your body as strongly because everything's too noisy. It doesn't have anywhere to sit, right? But again, this is where it's like you will begin to know God, when you allow the stability and stillness into your life to recognize that it's here all the time, And so that open heart, it's such a big piece about humanity's future. If we collectively, just the 36 of us in this group, learn to open our heart, how does that change the world in our community? It changes it in a massive, massive way. Because one open heart is connected to everyone else's open heart. It's an infinite exchange of love, right? It's a felt experience, and it's a beautiful experience. And so that becomes the embodiment of wisdom, right? It's no longer an intellectual thing. It's no longer about the books. You feel it, you know it in your body because you've been doing the work, right? That's the embodiment, and people will feel that embodiment off of you. It has a presence. There's a vibration that emits through the cells of your being when you're able to communicate from this place out of stability and stillness and clarity, right? So hopefully I lend those words to you to motivate you even further to doing this work, because it can absolutely change your life. And yeah, thank you for giving me the space for that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's embodied wisdom right there, and it's absolutely true. It is That's why I believe that Yeshua, always showed the open heart, the sacred heart, right? It was, to me, demonstrating that the open human heart is the one superpower we have. And an open human heart is much different than an emotional person. Sometimes emotional people feel like their heart is open, but ultimately it's that their heart is closed, because an open human heart, it's able to be with whatever is, however emotional it is, and it can hold that. That's the all-encompassing energy of the open human heart. And 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 I believe that that's the process that we're all in at the moment as a species. And the moment that the hearts begin to come out of the constriction of the lower planes and opens, my sense is that it will be like a domino effect, to our families and everyone around us. And we have the keys here. We have the tools to do it. And I think we're just being sped into evolutionary process through this dynamic we're going through collectively. And what a brilliant opportunity to just open the heart and continue this work of embodying wisdom. And Jose is absolutely correct. You can feel embodiment. You can feel it. You can feel it. You know, it's a different energy than someone who's just very intellectual and can spit out a lot of facts, which is cool. But wisdom feels like it penetrates other people. Like when that person is speaking, it's like you can really feel it, and you can really receive it, and that there's something really powerful about this individual. you know and I believe embodied wisdom is what penetrates people, and it opens their heart as well, because it's just like it's an energetic message that their body is interpreting as well. And it's reminding them of what's possible, and that they can also have this is not. That's why Jesus said, do as I do, and you can do greater works than I think just him, and just in the same way the Buddha and all the greats, they were not trying to tell us to they were just being guides to what's possible for us. It's like to take the teaching and do it yourself. Not to idolize that, but to do it yourself, to open your own heart, to walk the path of love, to continue to take non-love and convert it into love on the physical plane. And that's the game humanity is playing. The more we do that, the more we can move the collective. Okay, so let's see. I think Yvonne is okay. So she is signing. Are you seeing her, Jose?
I see a 425 number.
That's probably her. Let me see.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so let me just go through this slide here. But this is, again, just to kind of speak to, the power of the open human heart, of doing this work, right? The distribution of embodied energy, the energy of someone that is still working on sort of moving themselves out of that fear matrix. That toroidal field of fear that you see there, that's really accurate. It's really accurate. And you can begin to see that constriction around people versus this open human heart, this individual who knows that the divine resides within them, that they fear not when they walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It's just like there's a luminosity about that. And the world needs luminate emissaries of light during this darkness that humanity is facing. So with that, I would love to bring on a luminous being and an emissary of light. Many of you guys have already met her during the Delta, but those that have not, a special woman in Yvonne de la Flor here, and just a great teacher, a great ally, and someone who is an embodied instrument of wisdom that moves through her. You could feel it when she speaks, and so it's a real pleasure to have her here. And hold on one second. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to have her here and to be with us. And so, Yvonne, welcome to the call.
Hello. I had a couple of challenges to go in because we don't have internet here. They disconnected internet, the companies.